Today I'm going to talk about my favorite mechanism in London 2nd edition by Martin Wallace. This was perhaps my biggest surprise of Geekway to the West because it wasn't on my radar at all. I just happened to be wandering around. I ran into a Geekway friend, someone I pretty much only see at Geekway, Aaron, and he offered to teach it. And so I figured, okay, why not? Why not play a game that I know nothing about? And I loved it. It was really, really good. Beautiful art, really easy to learn, elegant mechanisms. I'm going to talk about kind of two things today. One overarching idea, which is that in London, one of the main things you're doing is that you're playing cards from hand and putting them in front of you as a tableau. And then every now and then, when you're ready, you can run this engine that you've built. And when you do that, for every card that you activate, you flip it over. You can't use it again. This is a really, really cool engine building mechanism. The thing that I love about it is that in some engine building games, you build your engine once and maybe you get to use it a little bit, but not all that much, and then the game is over. In this game, it's built around running your engine and different engines multiple times within the same game. So typically, in the first game that I played at least, I would play about 4 or 5 cards and then run my engine. So I'd play all these cards, 1 card per turn, and then maybe on my 4th or 5th or 6th turn, I would say, okay, I'm going to run my engine this turn. And I would activate each of those cards, their abilities that correspond with the engine. Sometimes cards have, comes into play abilities, but usually they have an engine building mechanism. And so I'd activate all those cards, I'd flip them over. Something else happens that I won't go into. It is relevant, but I won't go into it. It's related to poverty. But it's just so satisfying to see, okay, I'm building this thing and then I'm running it, and then I get to start over again. I don't have to wait for a new game to build a new engine. I get to build a new engine right now and run that again. And I think I did this maybe 3 times during the course of the game. So satisfying to do this. I love this idea of building an engine and running it, and then building another engine in the same game and running that as well. Really, really cool. A more specific thing I wanted to mention is that I alluded to poverty. So I won't go into too many details about this, but basically there are certain cards that will give you poverty in the game. And also, when you run your engine, I believe it's for each stack that you activate, you gain a poverty as well. These little black cubes. And at the end of the game, there's this chart showing you how many points you're going to lose for how much poverty you have. But there's some cool other mechanisms that go into this decision, or partially decision, partially this effect at the end of the game. Part of it is, the player who has the least poverty at the end of the game doesn't lose any points. They are, even if they have 20 poverty and the next players have 21, 22, and 23, that player with 20 poverty loses no points, even though they normally lose like 15 points for 20 poverty. So that's really cool. So I love the idea of this passive player interaction of the thing that you're doing. It gives you a reason to pay attention to the other player so that you have less poverty than they do. The other cool thing about this, and I think this is a really cool mathematical decision made by the designer, is that when you do the poverty calculation, you don't base it on your current number. You base it on your current poverty level minus the player who is exempted from poverty. So in that example I gave of 20, 21, 22, and 23, the player with 23 poverty, or each of those players, 23, 22, and 21, they subtract 20 from their poverty, and then they look at the poverty chart. So again, it gives them a reason to look at the player who is in last place in terms of poverty, or in first place, essentially, to determine how much poverty they can take on. Because, for example, say I'm being really conservative about poverty. I only have 3 poverty, and the next player has 15 poverty. They might need to think long and hard about taking any more poverty if they can prevent it, because they know that if the game ended right now, they would end up with 12 poverty, which is a lot of points to lose. But, on the other hand, if they have 15 poverty and I have 14, they may not care all that much about being exempted from poverty, but they may actually feel freer to gain more poverty because they know that they're going to end up subtracting 13 or 14 from their final poverty level. Hopefully I'm explaining this correctly. This is how we played. Hopefully it is correct based on the rules. But I really, really like that you can drop that, since there is a player who's being exempted from poverty, that their score is relevant to your final poverty level and that you get to deduct it. Really, really clever idea there. A lot of people, actually, I've read some reviews that have complained about poverty, but I actually think that's a really well done mechanism in this game. I have another thing that was a little fiddly about this game that I didn't like as much. It's the one thing that held the game back a little bit. I talk about it in my main Geekway video. I'll link to that below in case you want to check that out. But I want to focus on the positive stuff that I really, really love right now. And I really look forward to playing London again. If you have a favorite mechanism in London or in any game where either A, you get to build an engine and run it multiple times over the course of the game, maybe even multiple different engines, and B, other games that have kind of a punishing mechanism where you're comparing yourself to other players, but where it doesn't feel as punishing because of the choices you have within those passive interactions with other players, I'd love to hear about that in the comments. Thanks.